Okay, so we are continuing with our spot illustration project today. We always follow our course outline. And as you can see on the 28th, what we are adding to what we learned, we are learning about digital inking, the basics of it. In the last class, we saw the differences between raster line art, which you can make in Photoshop at a high resolution, and vector line art, which you can make with the Blob brush in Illustrator, which is my preference, which is infinitely scalable. But even if you make the raster line art, you can bring it into Illustrator and you can vectorize it. You can image trace it into clean vector line art. So I'll be starting today with that clean vector line art and finishing that up. And then we're going to learn the basics of computer coloring. So far, this is what we had done in class. We had just set up our sketch for vector digital inking with the Blob brush. So let's continue. We find our files. And it's assignment 5 that we're working on. And because I'm working in Illustrator, I am looking for a working file format that is an AI format, but not a test file. This is the one I'm actually working on. So that will open up in Illustrator. And that will support all the features, the brush sizes, the different organization of the layers and the paths. And this is how far I got as of last class. So I have my tablet, I have my stylus, and what I want to do is keep adding to these vector paths that I've created so far. You can see all the anchor points if I use the small selection tool, right? And to continue this with the Blob brush tool. So the Blob brush, it's underneath the paintbrush, but it is not the paintbrush. The paintbrush is a stroke-based tool. We want the Blob-based tool, which is a fill-based tool. And again, you want to spend some time setting it up. So how pressure sensitive, how thick is it? You see that that's quite thick. That's because I was working on another illustration with it in the meantime. So to change your settings, you double-click on the tool, the Blob brush, and you can set your size. And you can set your variation with pressure if you don't want it to be technical. And then I'm going to set it to be a little bit more smooth than accurate. And I'm going to try that out. Yeah. So that seems pretty good. So now, how can I tackle the rest of this? I focused on the head first, wanted to get a lot of those details. So now I can go a little bit faster. And a technique for doing kind of difficult curves. This is at kind of a set angle. It's kind of hard to do a curve up like this and get it right. So what you can do is go to the magnifying glass tool, open it up, and go down to what's called the rotate view tool. And the rotate view tool will let you turn your canvas just temporarily. Hold down spacebar, move it to where you want, so that you can get these arcs in ways that are more comfortable. So let's see, maybe about like that. And now I use the Blob brush, and I'm going to show the end of the tail here, and then I'm going to just make these arcs. And I wobble a little bit, but then the smooth tool, or not the smooth tool, but the smoothing setting on the Blob brush makes it nice and clean. I have it set to be pressure sensitive, so that helps. So it goes a little bit thinner as I lighten up on the pressure I'm using. And it's a good idea, especially if you're new to digital coloring, to think of this as a coloring book. So like in a coloring book, as much as possible, it's nice to contain your shapes. Right? So you see how there's no gaps. It doesn't need to be perfectly clean. It's just nice if there aren't any gaps, because that will make coloring a little bit easier later on. Now, I obviously will have some gaps because I don't want my flames actually touching my horse. So we'll see the difference between enclosed shapes and open shapes when we get to digital coloring. Okay, now I can use the same angle for the hooves. Do that all in one. And the hardest thing about digital inking is just like regular inking, it's starting and stopping and not having kind of a mess at those transitions. But because it's a vector, that can always be cleaned up. But I find this better than doing it in Photoshop or Photopea first and then vectorizing, because here I can see as I go what the vectors are. I'm actually creating the vectors and not making them after the fact. Give that a little bit more substance. The legs. And if I didn't want it to smooth out so much, I could always adjust, double-clicking the smooth setting for how smooth versus how accurate. And that would let me do these kind of subtle angles and capture those a little bit better. Now, a lot of people like how these tools, whether it's smoothing in Photoshop with the brush or whether it's the Blob brush tool in Illustrator and the smoothing options, a lot of people like how that cleans up their drawing. I'm going to go ahead and make it the original angle just by double-clicking on that rotate tool, and it will bring me back. So if you find you're having trouble getting a certain arc or a certain angle on your inking, just like with traditional inking, you can move the paper. With digital inking, you can use the rotate tool. You can also do that in Photoshop, found in the same place. All right. So I've got the major components here. With the little stars, I'm going to draw them a little bit bigger and then maybe move them down. It's going to have the sparkly rainbow tail. And then this transition, this is a little awkward. So the Blob brush is beautiful because I can just add to it and it will merge all of those together. But let's see. If I flip it upside down with the rotate tool, and what I'm going to do is actually erase with the eraser tool. Double click to do the settings, divide it up. I'm going to cut it there, cut it here. Go back to the Blob brush. I'm going to make the Blob brush a little bit smaller with the settings. I can zoom in with Command plus, and I just want to get this angle where I'm happier with it. And this might be a case of using the pencil tool as well, but let me just try with the Blob brush first. So I'm going to work on this outside edge first. That's the kind of tricky one. Then let it flow through. And then the top edge. Now that looks better. And then how can I really clean it up if I really want to control it? That's what's so wonderful about vectors, is I can use the pencil tool. I can set the pencil tool to be more smooth and accurate. I can use the small selection tool to see the anchor points. Once I can see the anchor points, I can use that pencil tool to start on the path and end on the path and really smooth it out. I can hold down Command to get back to a selection tool to see the anchors and then smooth it out. Okay, I've got all the major components. Let me flip it back around just by double-clicking on this tool. All right, so now I got to clean it up. I got to see areas where it's just a little off, and I can clean it up with the blob brush, like so. Like I want to keep this all contained. So just like I did before, I might change the angle of this, use the eraser, and then I could use the blob brush and paint, or if I think it'd be a little bit smoother, I can just go right to the pencil tool and then redraw the inside and outside edge, as long as I'm starting through the anchor point and ending through the anchor point. Then I hold down Command to see the anchor points, and I can redraw anything that needs to be smooth, especially where my inking started and stopped, right? That's where things get a little wonky sometimes, like in here. Just smooth it out. Now this is not logo design. This does not need to be as picky as what we've been doing in Illustrator before. Notice I have a lot of anchor points. I am not trying to really slim them down. I am just trying to get it so I generally like the inking. And this happens in traditional inking as well. You just use whiteout or graphic white paint to make corrections after the fact. So just little things, little nips and bobs, especially where I started and stopped. Sometimes I might want to narrow it like that. And then this is a nice example of starting and stopping, right? You get that little ink spill. Now you'll get a lot of these little artifacts when you image trace a raster image into a vector image. So it's all about kind of correcting it at the end and playing with the inside and the outside of the shape. So that happened because I didn't effectively start in the right place. All right. Illustrator is all about kind of clicking in the right place. And it's really only the pencil tool and the blob brush that really require the tablet and stylus. Everything else in Illustrator can be done pretty effectively with just a mouse or a trackpad, because it's all about correct clicking. So where I started and stopped the hooves, if I really wanted to make it look like a clean coloring book. We've used this project in the past to make a coloring book for the campus. It's still used when like elementary school students come and visit. And so we have a coloring book of Nico and of different campus buildings and of the lake. And though we can't make it perfect, it's good to know how to tweak it. All right, and then lastly, the tail, where I started today. Let me fix this. And again, when you're zoomed in, you can just hold down the space bar to get the hand tool to move around. And I just want kind of consistency of the line all the way through. And so things like this, I just want to clean up. Very easy with the pencil tool. Notice I don't use the eraser unless I'm cutting and making a new segment, because the eraser doesn't have a smooth function. So it can look very, very different. I've seen illustrators that I really like that will actually paint the whole shape in black, and then they'll use the eraser tool, particularly because it's not smooth at all, and